Hello and welcome to Mitchell's World, and today I wanted to do something a little different, and I kind of wanted to tell the history, or a brief history I should say, of the scroll saw, and a little bit on how to use it. Alright, now let's take a look. Now for those of you who do not know what a scroll saw is, it is a tool that is used to do very fine cutting work in wood. For example, I have this piece here which I did not make, but I've had for a very long time, and it is an extremely intricate cut made by a scroll saw similar to this. Now there's so many little grooves that they cut into this that if you tried using something such as the bandsaw, it would just rip this to shreds. It wouldn't keep this real fine pieces together. It would just rip them apart. And that's what the scroll saw is used for, is to try to get those real nice slim details without destroying your project. Now I tried to do that recently. Now I haven't used the scroll saw very much before, so I decided to do a small little project of making a little Pokemon Go egg, and it worked pretty decently. I had some issues with it chipping on the edges, but overall it worked really well. And to do this I just drilled into a small piece of wood that I had that was 1/4 of an inch in thickness. And I drilled into it, and then I was able to slide the blade through the hole so I could cut inside the wood there, so that I didn't have to cut from the outside and go in and just ruin it. I could do that detail without cutting from the outside and just working my way throughout. I could drill through and then cut little pieces out of it. Now when using this, you should make sure you have a thinner piece of wood. Like this would work pretty good, and then this is just a little thicker. Just a little bit, but just a little thicker, but you could still cut that relatively easy. But if you try to cut this, you're gonna have a hard time. This is more for thinner woods that typically are hardwood, so it doesn't chip as much. But if you try to cut something thicker than this, you should check your blade to see if it's even capable of doing that. Some of them will say right on it when you purchase them that they can only be used for a certain thickness. Some can cut pretty thick wood, but if you're doing that, me personally, I would use the bandsaw. But if you want to try it, or if you feel comfortable with it, go for whatever you feel comfortable and safe with. Also, it's very important when you're a first-time user of the scroll saw that you should keep this guard on. Now this guard is meant so that when you're putting the wood and feeding it into the saw blade, that the wood doesn't get kicked up and fling back at you or cause your fingers to go into the blade. Now I would definitely keep this in. Even if you're a pro at it, it is not a bad idea at all to keep this in. Now I didn't, because I'm just used to that feel using the bandsaw, but I would highly recommend using as many guards as you can when it comes to any sort of machinery, just to make sure that you're as safe as possible. Okay, now I'm going to show you what to do when removing the blade of a scroll saw, or at least certain scroll saws. But first off, always make sure, no matter what tool you're using, to unplug it and make sure that switch is turned off, so that there's no way that this can turn on at all when you're touching that blade. If it turns on at all when you're touching that, it will cause a lot of damage and you will go to the hospital. So make sure that you're as safe as possible and that this has no power going to it. And then once we know it's safe, we can unscrew this top here, if I can turn it the right way, and then this blade will be loosened and I can pull it out and then replace it with another blade. For this piece that I made, I had a long piece of oak that I had so that I had more room to play with, so I wasn't super close to that blade. Make sure your fingers aren't really close to that blade or you could hurt yourself, especially if it grabs it and pulls it up. That's bad news. There are other people who just say the heck with it, but do as you will, just please be safe with whatever you pick. You don't want anybody to get hurt when trying new stuff, and especially using power tools. Okay, now I want to go through the history of the scroll saw, and to do that we have to go back to the very basic form of it. Now this is the very basic hand tool version of the scroll saw, so this is just not electrically powered or anything like that. It's all you using this. Now this was, when it was originally made, a German craftsman made a very thin blade, and this was back in the 1500s. He made a thin blade, and then a French craftsman made something to hold it, which he called a boule. Now I hope I am saying that right, but it's called a boule saw. I'll put the spelling here. But this nowadays is called a coping saw. And this is very good for clamping a piece down and cutting it just like these pieces, but without having a big and expensive piece of machinery. Now it's not too expensive, but if you want to go cheap, then the scroll saw is the way to go, and historically is the first version technically of this electric scroll saw. And also, the scroll saw did not become machine powered until the very late 1700s, but then got its first patents in the beginning of the 1800s. And it was very popular in Victorian style architecture, which is what this was mainly used for at that time. And now, although some people do try to recreate that, they do other things such as this and a few other different types of scroll saw art. Thank you very much for watching this video. Now this was just a basic history on the scroll saw and what you can do with it, but I really wanted just to do that because it's just a cool machine and I haven't had the opportunity to use it much, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to try it and show you guys what I made and show you what it's capable of, even though I didn't make this one here. And just to talk about the intricacies of it. And I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. If you liked it, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I would super appreciate it. And as always, have a good one.